And then finally, we come to our main event of the evening, our long-awaited main event, a bull rope match between Dustin Rhodes and Comoroto with Solo and Noah Gogo. So the Rhodes family continues with these guys from earlier in the program, but why have Dustin Rhodes and Nick Comoroto had a match yet?
Certainly not on TV that I recall. I think I would remember it.
So they start out with a bull rope match.
Why
which is
not?
like starting your murder mystery on chapter 12.
It's like starting your feud with War Games.
So
maybe that really is what he's doing. He's doing everything in reverse.
He wrote it down, and he's doing everything backwards from bottom to top instead of top to bottom. I don't know. There wasn't any go-go because they didn't want to mess with his heat, but we did get Solo with Comoroto. And guess what? There was a jump start on the ramp. The heel Comoroto jumps. Well, they start fighting, and Comoroto takes over on Dustin and beats him down and throws him in the ring, and then just lets the referee hook him up because Dustin was hooked up to the bull rope, which we'll get to in a minute, but Comoroto wasn't, so the heel just got to run wild in front of the referee and then says, okay, now hook me up, and the referee hooks him up. Instead of saying, you fucking guy, you just fucking took unfair advantage, so you're disqualified or whatever the fuck. What was that? It wasn't a rope. What were they using for the bull rope?
I don't know.
It was flat, and it looked like one of those, you know, the garden hoses that don't keep their shape. They're flat until water runs into them and then they expand. But it looked like an inflatable garden hose of some kind, a flat, long thing. It wasn't a rope and it wasn't a strap. It wasn't a strap like for a strap match. It wasn't leather. It didn't make any noise, but it wasn't a bull rope for a bull rope match because it wasn't a fucking rope. They just got some thing that was laying around in one of the maintenance closets that they used to tie something to something or whatever and stuck a cowbell in the middle of it. And then they didn't use the cowbell. What, once or twice? Comoroto got juice. He didn't hit him with the cowbell to get the juice. As a matter of fact, I'm jumping ahead, but he didn't do anything to Comoroto to get juice. Apparently, they were so convinced that Comoroto was so fucking green with a blade that everybody in the United States would see it. So they fight out in the crowd, and then Dustin throws him back to ringside and gets jumped by Solo, and the camera goes off of Comoroto, and you come back a minute later, and he's bleeding for no reason because he didn't get his head run into anything. So the first part of the match, they fought on the floor. It's a bull rope match, and they're fighting on the floor and over the rail and into the ringside seats. So they're having a bull rope match in the crowd. Would that be the first time in the history of history that that's ever happened?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, I don't know. I actually can't say. I mean, Dusty and Terry Funk may have had a wild one in West Palm Beach at one point.
Not in the crowd, because Terry Funk would have ended up with his guts cut out.
That's a good point.
You couldn't fight in the crowd in the territory days, or the heel would be sliced from asshole to appetite. But we've put a hat on a hat again. We've got a bull rope match, and we're not using the ring. They didn't get in the ring till the fucking end of this thing. They're in the crowd, and while they're in the crowd, some masked guy jumps onto Cody, onto Comoroto, rather.
Yeah.
Not Cody, it is Dustin anyway, but jumps on Comoroto, and he presses him and throws him into the rest of the quote-unquote fans, who were not only all jobbers, but you might, since they have fans back in the building, you might have convinced the viewers that they were actual ringside fans and not plants, except for the one guy standing there wearing eyeshadow and lipstick, wearing a pink jacket and a silver vest from Liberace's garage sale, that jumped his cue and tried to get in front of him too early and then backed up and then took a bump, even though the guy that was thrown completely missed him. So thanks to that fucking jolly joker, we know that all those fans were phony. I assume you saw fucking Paul Lynn's illegitimate nephew.
Will you stop it? The guy, the guy certainly stood out, and he was certainly a bit flamboyant, but...
Yeah. So when you're trying to pass off one of your paid employees as a regular wrestling fan at ringside, put him in a goddamn fluorescent pink jacket and have him wear makeup. Nobody will notice him.
I've noticed it at a few other points in this episode that they were clearly still putting the planted fans at ringside. The trainees or the jobbers or whatever. They've never stopped.
They're still all the ones around the ring because they don't want to put fans around the ring because they'll sue when one of these idiots lands on them. So anyway, this hot phony garbage. Solo glommed Dustin, like I said, and they fought while Comoroto took about a day and a half to get his color, and he got a pap smear out of it. I'll give him that. He probably used a toothpick. And then Comoroto tried to get heat on Dustin, but he just basically paced around a lot. He'd hit him or kick him and then pace around. They're still on the floor. The whole thing's on. They go to the break. They're still on the floor. Comorato's greener than a pepper tree, and he has a lot of potential, but he reminds me of Hercules Hernandez if Hercules wasn't as cut, wasn't as athletic, and couldn't work. Because right now they got a muscle guy that's really green, and he doesn't need to have long singles matches on national television. I don't know that this guy needs to be on national TV. But since they've rushed every single one of their wrestling school students through this, that's what they got. Anyway, they come back from the break. They're fighting on the apron. They've made it closer to the ring, just not inside of it. And Solo is setting up a table while the two guys are fighting. For what? For a contrived spot that's supposed to be coming up, we guess, because there's no other reason. Why is he on the floor setting up a table when his guy is fighting his opponent on the apron of the ring? Nobody's in control. It's not like, hey, put him through this. He's just out there doing his own thing. But then finally, guess what? The heel sets up the table. And fucking finally, Comoroto catches Dustin and power bombs him through the table, something nobody could have seen coming, and throws him in the ring and covers him and gets a 2 count. And then they just continue the match. That wasn't the finish. So then Solo takes the turnbuckle pad off, but one of the gun kids comes out and attacks Solo.
And that has to be explained because even I think Jim Ross is like, who's that?
Yes, well, because he couldn't tell because we don't, and nobody had said. And here's the thing. JR, and he may have very well done this now that I'm thinking about it, even though it's another guy in street clothes coming out of the fucking crowd out of nowhere, so I wouldn't blame the announcers if they couldn't see him. But nobody else said his name either, that's why JR said, who's that? So one of the announcers could say, well, that's Colton Gunn. So that's not necessarily out of the way, but the fact that you can't tell who's doing what to who until the announcers say their name is an issue. However, Solo's taking the turnbuckle pad off. Colton Gunn attacks him, and they fight off. Dustin and Comoroto finally get in the ring for the first time in this fiasco. Dustin makes a comeback, goes back and forth, and Dustin won. They never used the exposed turnbuckle. Why was this guy jumping up and taking the turnbuckle pad off? It's like he was just doing house cleaning chores while a match was going on. Well, they're having a match, so I'll set up a table over here. Say, that turnbuckle pad looks bad. I better take that off. It related to nothing they were doing in the ring. It's just spots that guys have seen people do in a match that made sense, but not all in the same match and only when they were fucking explained. And as I said, Dustin won and everybody left. Closing thoughts. We've gone too long.
Not really. Comoroto, it's funny you bring up Hercules Hernandez. That was my thought. He looks like a guy that would have landed in Mid-South Wrestling between 82 and 84 and would have come in stiff and would have learned how to work.
Yeah.
We'll see if that happens here.
Well, that's not going to happen here because this ain't Mid-South Wrestling.
I don't know why there was a bull rope match. It tells me they gave up that this was the main event on the show. That means they're really packing hour 1 and hour 2. They realize it's going to be a bit of a problem.
Well, when we mentioned that, we said you're going to be fighting sleep and attrition due to sleep of viewers. So go for a more Saturday night's main event type of format and put your big matches on earlier. But you've got to have something to billboard at the end, but just out of nowhere, not one single solitary soul was going to watch this just because it was a bull rope match. Dustin Rhodes versus Comoroto, because they're mad at each other, could have served, especially when they didn't have a rope. So they didn't plan ahead. Nobody could even go to fucking Lowe's and buy rope.
No build-up, no promo. My father made this match famous, and I've had enough of you, even though we've never wrestled, that I challenge you to the match my dad made famous. Nothing. Not one promo. The announcers had to explain to us the significance of the bull rope and Dustin's relationship to it. It was just all of a sudden, here's a bull rope match. Here's a street fight.
With no rope.
Yeah. No rope.
So they're at the end of their rope. But anyway, it is what it is. I can't explain it anymore. Are you done?